Let's talk about the petrodollar. You've probably seen the headlines flying around, and they all seem to ask the same question. Is this massive pillar of global finance about to come crashing down? Well, today, we're going to cut through all that noise and figure out what is really going on.
And look, this isn't just talk from some forgotten corner of the internet. We're seeing major news outlets like CNN report on big geopolitical moves that seem specifically designed to hit the dollar right where it hurts, the oil trade. It really makes you wonder if a huge shift is already in motion.
So let's get right to it. Is the petrodollar system in trouble? The short answer is yes. But, and this is the really important part, it's almost certainly not for the reasons you've been hearing. The real story is way more interesting than the simple headlines suggest. So we're going to separate the common myth from the much deeper reality.
Okay, first things first, let's break down the popular theory, the one you hear everywhere, that explains why the petrodollar is supposedly so powerful.
The term itself sounds kind of complex, but it's actually super simple. Petrodollars are just the US dollars that countries get paid when they sell their oil. That's it. It's because for decades, the global oil market has pretty much always been priced in American dollars. Now, the popular logic that follows from this seems pretty airtight, right? It goes like this. 1, oil is priced in dollars. 2, pretty much every country on Earth needs to buy oil. So 3, that must mean every country needs to have US dollars. This creates this constant built-in demand for American currency, which helps keep it at the top of the financial food chain.
And honestly, that's a neat and powerful idea. For a long time, it held a lot of water. But when you start to look closely at how the global economy actually works today, well, the foundation of that simple theory starts to look pretty shaky.
So why is this pricing theory a bit overblown now? Well, there are a few big reasons. First, thanks to modern finance, you can swap currencies in the blink of an eye. You don't need a giant stash of dollars just waiting to buy oil. Second, some major oil sellers, like Russia, are already pricing their oil in other currencies anyway. And third, the whole world is just getting more efficient. Our economies aren't as oil-intensive as they used to be.
This brings us to the real engine behind the petrodollar's power. It was never just about pricing. It was about a much bigger, much more important, and for a long time completely secret system.
See, the true magic of the system wasn't about how countries bought oil. It was about what the oil sellers did with those billions of dollars after they got paid. That's where this thing called petrodollar recycling comes in. They took all those profits and plowed them right back into the US by buying American assets, especially US government debt, also known as treasuries.
Now, this whole setup didn't happen by accident. Not at all. It was actually formalized way back in 1974 through a secret deal between the United States and Saudi Arabia. The core of that agreement was that the Saudis would take their massive profits from selling oil and invest them right back into US government bonds.
And you really have to admire how clever this arrangement was. It created this perfect, self-reinforcing loop. The US got a guaranteed massive buyer for its debt, which let it borrow money cheaply and run big deficits. And what did the oil exporters get in return? A super safe place to park their mountains of cash and, an unspoken security alliance with the world's biggest superpower.
Okay, so if the system was so powerful and so beneficial for both sides, why are we talking about it like it's in the past tense? Let's dig into why this one secret recycling machine is starting to break down.
It really all boils down to two fundamental changes. First, many of those oil exporting countries just aren't sitting on those same giant piles of extra cash that they were in the 70s or 80s. And second, the countries that do have surpluses, well, they're just not as keen on parking all that money in US debt anymore.
Let's just take Saudi Arabia, the original key partner in this deal. These days, they're pouring absolutely enormous sums of money into diversifying their economy away from oil. Think of giant projects like NEOM. All that spending means they just don't have as much spare cash to recycle. In fact, some years recently, they've actually been running their own budget deficits.
And you don't have to take my word for it. The data tells a really clear story here. That built-in, almost artificial demand for US bonds from oil nations just isn't what it used to be. The trend is pretty undeniable.
We can actually see this playing out in the markets in real time. Normally, when there's a big global crisis, investors stampede towards safety. And safety has always meant US government bonds. That flood of buyers pushes prices up and the return, or the yield, goes down. But during a recent crisis, the exact opposite happened. Yields actually went up. That's a huge flashing red light that some of the biggest traditional buyers were selling, not buying.
And that brings us to what might be the single most important takeaway from this entire explainer.
it's time to completely reframe how we think about this entire problem.
The common view is that the end of the petrodollars is the thing that's threatening the US dollar. But the deeper reality is that this is exactly backwards. The petrodollar system isn't the disease. Its slow decline is actually a symptom of a much bigger issue with the dollar itself.
So why is this happening? It's because the appeal of US Treasuries isn't a given anymore. For decades, they were considered the safest investment on planet Earth. Full stop. But now, with America's own national debt growing continuously, and serious questions being raised about the independence of its central bank, global investors are starting to look around and wonder, is this really the safest place to put our money anymore?
So, when you put it all together, the slow demise of petrodollar recycling isn't the crisis itself. It's more like a mirror reflecting some really big changes in the world. And that leaves all of us with a much bigger, much more pressing question to ask. If this 50-year-old support system is fading away, what does that tell us about the fundamental health of the US dollar today?